We've made our playoff picks. You guys can go find that video on YouTube or on cleveland.com. We all picked Ohio State to make the college football playoff. But, you know, stuff happens. Landis, what would it look like for them not to make it? We know Ohio State last year had 2 losses, and still in that room on Selection Day, a lot of people thought they were going to get in with 2 losses, and they didn't. They finished 5th. I wish we had a wireless microphone. I'm going to ask for that for Christmas. What would keep them? We're so professional. What would keep them out? What's the scenario? How possible is that scenario?
I don't think it's possible. Like I don't find it very likely. The thing that I think about a lot with Ohio State as it pertains to success this year is the offensive line. I think if they can block people, they're going to go to the playoff. Their defense has been good enough. I think even last year, like the Iowa game aside, I thought the defense was probably good enough to get them to the playoff, and it has been for the last few years. It's just the offense has not been very playoff worthy. They couldn't throw the ball consistently enough to be taken seriously as a national championship contender, in my opinion. I think this year they will, and as long as they can protect Dwayne Haskins, I think they're going to get there. And the defense will be good. There's obviously questions at linebacker. I think they figure it out, and if they can block, they're going to get there. Like the schedule is tough. It's probably, of the teams you would consider for playoff consideration, Ohio State has among the toughest schedules. Maybe the toughest. They got to play Michigan, Michigan State, Penn State, TCU. Like, it's not an easy road to get there. But I still think they're the class of the Big Ten. No one recruits like Ohio State. The only other team that does, or 2 other teams that do, or 3 other teams that do, aren't in their conference. So I think the path that we've seen every year since Urban Meyer's been here and the playoffs existed is still there for Ohio State. Don't trip up more than once in the Big Ten, and you're going to win the Big Ten title game, and you can get there. So I think this is the deepest team Urban Meyer has had. Maybe it's at the top-end talent is not quite there because 2015 was ridiculous, but I think it can get there. And I think there's a lot working in Ohio State's favor and not very many stumbling blocks, I think, on their path to the playoff.
Tim, one thing I think about with this team is that I think they could be very, very good and still lose 2 games because they are playing other very, very good teams. Last year they were really good, but they played a playoff team and a Heisman candidate and the #1 pick in the draft who came in here and stuck a flag in them. And then they had like a bad day against a team that wasn't good every week, but Iowa was absolutely good enough on that day to make them pay. When you look at the schedule, let's talk about Ohio State still being good. But how realistic is it, you think, that they still lose 2 of those 4 big games, or that they go 3-1 in those big games, but there's still an Iowa-type game out there that trips them up, and all of a sudden they're a really good team with 2 losses?
I really, at this point, don't see scenarios where 2 lost teams can get in. Until one does, I'm never going to really pick one. But, I mean, if you're going to lose to a good team, lose twice, you got to lose to 2 good teams. You can't have an Iowa loss. And it's clear from the playoff, the selection show, that was the anchor that they just could never get behind. It was kind of almost the giant X that almost prematurely eliminated them. We all thought they still had a shot to get in after beating Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I've been on record saying that. I'm still on record. If you're going to lose, though, as we've seen in playoff history, lose early. Get that loss out of the way, and then if you win out, you're in good shape. You can't lose 2, and you can't lose in November, because you do that twice, you're pretty much costing yourself a playoff spot. So I think based on what I just said, you can guess which game I'm predicting they'll lose this season.
I can't. Don't make us guess. Say the word.
Penn State. I just can't get past that right now. I need to see them win at Penn State this time before I'm going to pick it, which I know is an oxymoron. Kind of tells you where I'm going with that one. But if that's the only game they lose, they're getting in, plain and simple, I think. If they lose a second, particularly in November, they're not getting in.
I think they can lose twice and get in. I think you can lose at TCU and lose a Big Ten game that doesn't keep you out of the Big Ten championship and have 2 losses and get in. I don't think it was 2 losses that kept Ohio State out of the playoff. It was losing by 1,000,000 at Iowa that kept Ohio State out of the playoff. So we haven't seen it yet. It's going to happen. And I think if you have 2 losses but you also have a conference championship in a league like the Big Ten, you can get in.
That's interesting, and I think that's an interesting distinction. If you're going to have 2 losses, you still have to find a way into your conference championship game. I mean, it's absolutely possible they lose to Penn State and Michigan. I mean, that's like and then they're not in, because then Penn State or Michigan's going to the Big Ten championship game. And it's absolutely possible that they lose to Penn State or Michigan and Michigan State. I mean, Brian Lewerke's good. They have everybody back. It's D'Antonio. D'Antonio's been a thorn in their side. I don't really think they're going to lose to TCU. I think that'll end up being a good win for them. But I definitely think it's possible we can't talk about the Big Ten East being the best division in college football and not imagine a world where Ohio State loses twice in that division. And I think, to your point, if they lose, that was the scenario last year to get in, was lose twice, but one of them's non-conference to a really good non-conference team, to a playoff team. TCU, I don't think is going to be a playoff team, so I think that's not quite that. And I don't know. Like, I'm not picking them to lose both those games, but I think Michigan's going to be great. And to go, the idea of like, they don't have Urban Meyer for the first 3 games. Penn State's rolling. Trace McSorley's doing his thing. I mean, that is absolutely possible. So I don't think it's possible that Ohio State's going to be not good, right? I think they're going to be really, really good. But I'll tell you what. In 2005, they were really, really, really good. And they lost to Texas and Penn State, and they finished number 4 in the country, and that would have put them in the playoff now. But, that was an awesome team that didn't get to play for a national championship. This could be an awesome team that doesn't get to play for a national championship. And I agree. There's a lot of playoff stuff in there. They were an awesome team in 2015 that lost once and didn't get in. So depends what – I also think, Georgia could very well go undefeated. I think Clemson could very well go undefeated. I don't know, but I think West Virginia's kind of a fraud in the Big 12. Maybe Oklahoma goes undefeated. All that context matters too. So that's out there. Don't start assuming. Don't have your national championship tickets bought yet, but expect them to have a great year. Tim, Bill, Doug, but we all did pick them to make the playoff. So, in the end, here's what I'm going to say. As an ancient philosopher once said, only time will tell.